Butterfield Hall, full to bursting with people that have come to listen to our fantastic speaker, Captain Elizabeth Godwin, who is was the first female officer in the Lifeguards, the Household Cavalry. Her career has taken in remarkable experiences both at home and overseas. She's been involved in some big events. You may even have seen her on television. You might not have noticed that it was her on television, but at the Queen's funeral, and also state funeral, and also at King Charles's coronation. She was involved in both of those. Her drive and determination to succeed have been absolutely remarkable, and she really is an exceptional Exonian, and we're absolutely delighted to have you here tonight, Lizzie, to talk to us and to inspire our young people, particularly with your stories of your life in the military. So I'm going to hand over to Lizzie. I'm really excited to hear what she's got to say. I'm also very impressed by what she's wearing. I'm sure we're going to hear something more about that. So Lizzie Godwin. Thank you.
Thanks very much for all taking your time this evening and coming to hear my journey. I'm going to start my talk by sharing a moment on the day of the coronation, and a moment that I've reflected on quite a few times. So the coronation had happened, His Majesty the King looking very regal in the Gold State coach, and 3 Division, the Lifeguards, which is my division, were positioned just behind the Gold State coach coming down the Mall. Now, when we're on the Mall, we like to take up quite a lot of space. And so our spacings are sort of spaced out between the horses to keep everything looking nice and smart. But as we head towards Buckingham Palace, there's quite a prominent turn around what we call the birthday cake, which some of you might recognise to be Queen Victoria Memorial. And so I gave the command to close up the spacings as we came off the Mall. And I could hear all the right noises being sort of shouted. They're not meant to shout, but sort of words of rather strong statements to the junior troopers by our junior commanders, the corporals. And it's quite a tight gap to get through the sort of large iron gates in front of Buckingham Palace forecourt. You've got to get 5 horses abreast with jack boots, which are these rather large leather boots that we wear, and they spend hours polishing those, so they don't really want to touch the next jack boot next to them. And as we came through Buckingham Palace forecourt, I gave the next command to conduct our sharp sort of handbrake turn to park up in front of the Blues and Royals. And I remember that moment thinking incredibly, or feeling incredibly proud. We'd conducted so many rehearsals and practiced time and time again, on foot, on the horse, and so it felt really good that we'd made it to that position. And I punched out into the royal salute and brought my sword down as the Gold State coach rolled through the archway to my left. And as I shifted my eyes under my helmet to the right, I saw the rest of the carriages coming through. And I caught the eye of Princess Charlotte. Now there's me, rigid, trying not to break my stance. And she did a double take at me. And she beamed back. It was very difficult not to smile back at her. And in that moment, as she rolled through the archway, she put her hand on the glass. And it was a look that I'd seen so many times before, conducting ceremonial state public duties, where other women had recognised that there was a woman in uniform. And in those moments, I've realised that when I wear my uniform, I represent so much more than just myself. And with that comes great responsibility, or I've felt a real profound sense of responsibility. Not just to leave the ladder down for the next generation of women coming through, and to hope to be a part of a shift in a mindset and in a society where women are able to to have the opportunities that I've been very, very grateful to have. But also to conduct my role to the best of my abilities, so that when I'm out there representing myself and other women, it is of good reflection. So although I open my talk by acknowledging my responsibilities and that I'm in an incredibly unique position as a woman, when many other, in many generations before me, who equally as competent just simply didn't have the opportunity that I've had, I caveat that all with the times in my career when I have felt the deepest sense of satisfaction have been when my gender has been entirely irrelevant. And that is when I've just been another troop leader in the lifeguards. And I've felt the most respect from my soldiers when I've just been Lizzie Godwin, the troop leader, who I can go to and speak to and who's going to just do her job. So today I present to you as just another officer in the Household Cavalry. And I have my first technical glitch. Perhaps not as seamless as it thought. So I'm going to take you back to where it all started. And before I walked up the steps of Old College on Ironing Board Sunday, my military journey actually started here at Exeter School. And I've been very fortunate today to go and see the CCF contingent, and that is a time in my wonderful career here, or time at Exeter School, when my adventurous spirit and love for the military was developed. We went on weekends away, which, speaking with them today, I think the same weekend is set, which is where we went rabbit skinning and throwing axes. And just when do you get an opportunity, or how many other schools give that opportunity for their recruits to go and do that over the weekend? Whether it be at Pixie's Holt on Dartmoor, which I'll talk a little bit about and you'll all be familiar with, or whether it be the weekends away that I went walking in Snowdonia. My love for the military was being developed. And so I'm incredibly thankful to Exeter School for those military links being forged, because it's not just my adventurous spirit that was developed, but also the opportunity to go for the Army Scholarship Scheme, of which we've had many successful military applicants going through. And I'm looking at some of the faces among you who I spoke to earlier today who are also lining yourselves up to go for that scholarship. And good luck. I think it's absolutely wonderful that you're going for it still. And it's on the scholarship scheme that I earned my place at the best leadership academy in the world, the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. So even though I'm going to talk to you about some wonderful opportunities that I've had during my career and some really unique experiences, I would still say that my year at the academy has been the best year of my life to date. So what exactly does Sandhurst do to make leaders? Well, the programme is full of type 2 fun. This is activity that the military describe, or it's a sort of common name that we give, to activity that is not very fun at the time, but is quite fun to think about afterwards. And it's in that activity and the structure that the academy teach you about basic infantry tactics that they instill mental resilience, determination, adaptability, of which is a skill I've certainly had to evolve, and copious amounts of competitive spirit. And the friendships that I forged at Sandhurst have been some of the most wonderful friendships that I have still in my life today. And I met some of the most inspiring people. And so the academy is this incredibly intense period of 44 weeks that's broken down into 3 terms. And over junior term, you don't really average that much sleep, maybe 4 hours a night. So you crawl your way to the end of junior term. And then when intermediate term comes around, as if it wasn't a incredibly pressurized environment enough, you've got to face something called regimental selection boards. Now, RSBs are an opportunity for you as an individual to go and visit the regiment that you might want to join when you leave Sandhurst. So you're all generalists in junior term. And I went just after the Defence Secretary announced that women were able to join the combat arms. So that was back in 2018. I'm very fortunate to have been walking up the steps of Old College just after that announcement. And in my time at Sandhurst, I went to consider what visits or what regiments would I quite like to go and experience and see what might be out there as my career. And it was actually my platoon staff who recommended to me to go and have a look at the Household Cavalry. I was playing polo in junior term, kind of liked horses, and was doing okay in the field. So they recommended that I have a look. And so I went on a visit in intermediate term, and Brigadier Mark Berry, who was commanding officer at the time, interviewed me for about 2 hours. He's an incredibly inspiring character. And I realized in that moment that this regiment produces very inspiring people. And it was something I wanted to be a part of. I also had the opportunity to meet the soldiers who were out on the tank park when some buildings hadn't even been built yet. There were no hangars, and they were all working on the vehicles in the rain. But their morale was exceptionally high. And I remember walking away from that visit thinking, I know which regiment I want to join. For those of you in the room who are aspiring to go to Sandhurst, I have 3 top tips. The first one will be to join an OTC, the Officer Training Corps. When you go to university, if you choose to go, it is a great continuation of your time in the CCF. It gives you an excellent insight into what Sandhurst is like or what life in the military is like. I went on some fantastic adventurous training opportunities whilst getting paid to do so. And you meet like-minded people. So top tip number 1. Tip number 2 is don't do what I did and wait until you get to Sandhurst to consider what regiment you might want to join. Know where you want to go before you get there, or have an idea of what role you want to do, because it really takes the pressure off. And the last one is go in May. So each year there are new intakes, and for the most competitive regiments, they have a set number of people that they can take for that year. And if you go in May, you go at the start of that intake, so you give yourself the best opportunity. So I'd learned how to be a leader, supposedly, in the 44 weeks at Sandhurst. Next, I needed to learn about what the role is that the Household Cavalry do. And that is armoured reconnaissance. The Household Cavalry, as a regiment, we pride ourselves in the ability to conduct state ceremonial public duties to the highest standard, while simultaneously deploying across the globe as armoured reconnaissance soldiers. And that was something that absolutely enticed me. The dual role capability is really unique to my regiment. And our key role in that is reconnaissance. So for 5 months after Sandhurst, I spent my time rolling around on one of these and getting paid to do so. So what exactly is reconnaissance? Reconnaissance is the timely and accurate reporting of information on the enemy to your chain of command, so your immediate commander. So it's fun. You're in the mix. You're up close with the enemy. You're on the front line. You understand what the dynamic and the picture is. The armoured element is the vehicle that you can see there. That's me with my gunner in a CVRT, which is the armament element is the 30mm Radon cannon and the vehicle that protects you. Reconnaissance can also be conducted dismounted, which I'll talk a little bit about later. It's fast-paced. This vehicle can go as fast forwards as it can backwards. It's dynamic, it's sneaky, and it's great fun. You operate at reach. So you're nowhere near your immediate chain of command. They're in an ops room behind you. You're at that forefront, so close to the enemy picture, and you're trying to coordinate the rest of your troop, which is 4 vehicles, and you can't see them. You're trying to listen to 2 radio nets at the same time, 1 to the other vehicles that you're meant to be controlling, and 2 to your chain of command. Your driver needs to know where to go, and if he's pretty necky, or he or she is pretty necky, then they might be going over some ditches with, fairly fast pace. Your gunner needs to know where their arcs are, so they're not crossing their barrel into potential friendly forces locations. And you have to be navigating. And you have to pretend the whole time that you know what you're doing. But this role massively feeds into the culture of the regiment. And in that, my points are that you're in a vehicle, potentially for weeks at a time, with junior ranks. And as an officer, that's a fairly unique position to be in, because it's impossible to maintain that strict, separation between ranks for the entire time. So there's a real nuance to the regiment, and to completely contrast that, when we conduct state ceremonial public duties, I've never seen so much saluting in my life. So the contrast of that creates an incredibly nuanced relationship and rapport with your junior troops, which is really fun to navigate, and you get to know them on a really personal level. The second element that feeds in from our role is operating at reach. Your commander has no idea what ground is in front of you. They can't physically see it. They don't have the same situational awareness that you have. So it fosters initiative and ideas at the lowest level. And this is something the Army called mission command. And the entire culture of the regiment that I've experienced, even our day-to-day life in conducting our work job role when we're not on exercise, that culture is absolutely entwined in how we conduct ourselves. When I arrived at regimental duty, I quite quickly realised that there's far more than just our core role of recce. And as a junior troop leader, I was sent on so many varied activities, it was quite exciting. From adventurous training, and you can see myself jumping out of a perfectly good plane, to live firing and running the PNCO cadre, which is the pre-non-commissioned officer cadre, where our junior troopers, it's their first step between when they promote to a lance corporal. And I ran that with a package, with a training team, and that was one of the most epic experiences of my time there, because you've got your own train set and you can do it kind of how you want, and it's really great. I also got involved in the Cresta Run, which I spoke to a CCF individual earlier who will be familiar with that kind of sporting activity. But again, you're on a sort of metal tray that was designed in the 60s, and you launch yourself down an icy chute that has a particular corner that nobody really survives. And I managed to break 3 ribs and dislocate my shoulder, but it was a really great experience. Remember that type 2 fun. But the most important aspect of my time at Bulford at the Armoured Regiment was my first deployment with my troop. Now, when I turned up, I was the first woman, and the regiment was sort of thinking what to do with me. And we deployed to Gibraltar, and I deployed as a dismounted platoon commander, which was actually, I'm really fortunate and really glad that that happened. Because we deployed, Gibraltar, some of you will be familiar with, is a huge rock. And you can go up and down it lots of times, apparently, in 3 weeks. And in that time, we were carrying some fairly heavy kit on our backs. So it was the first physical challenge that my troops had seen me do. And I think they thought, okay, she can do the job, fine. And from that point onwards, the rapport between myself and my troop really developed. So it was a really pivotal moment for me, and I was really grateful for the opportunity to showcase my capability. So as the troop sort of at that point hit the ground running, and we actually became a little bit competitive within D Squadron, which was perfect because the next opportunity was the regimental patrols competition across Dartmoor, which you should all be familiar with as ground. And that's my team there, that's me top left, and my 2IC in the middle. And so we stepped off, and it wasn't until about 6 hours into the patrol when I received information over the radio that the call sign in front of us, Captain Harry Stone, I will never let him forget it, had got into a little bit of difficulty. It was inclement weather, really challenging. The fog had come in, so you couldn't really see much in front of you. The terrain was not great, it was sodden, and so, you know, this was a challenge. And I realised, kind of knowing where we were on the map, that we might be getting involved here. So Captain Harry Stone called over the net, and he called in a real-time casualty scenario. Now, only a year and a half into my time at the regiment, and this was the first opportunity where it wasn't a scenario, it wasn't training, there was a genuine casualty that I had to step up and when asked to, be an asset to assist with that medical evacuation. So it was a really prominent moment for me. I sort of got the information and spoke to the team and gave them the clear direction of what we were going to go and do. And so we cached our Bergens and went and assisted with the casualty extraction. And it took 6.5 hours for us to get Trooper Whitaker, who'd broken his leg, off that mountainside. My team were exposed to the cold, windy, wet weather. They hadn't eaten, and they were probably dehydrated and tired. And so we got brought back in off the training area. And speaking to the coordinators of the exercise, 3 hours later, they told us, "You're going back out." And that was one of the most challenging positions that I'd been in as a junior officer, because I had a team that were demotivated. They'd just done, they'd just seen one of their fellow friends break their leg. And I had to motivate my 2IC and my team to get back out and finish the patrol. So why do I talk to you about that? Well, I suppose I had to implement everything that I'd learnt at Sandhurst and in my recce training to get us back out on the ground. And it's the closest that I've come so far to deploying out in a real-time scenario. I haven't yet been on operations. That's absolutely something that I would love to do in my career. But that's the closest that I've come to a really challenging situation. So the Monday morning, we got back from the patrol, and I received a sort of verbal pat on the back from the adjutant. And it was in that moment that I realised that I'd learnt how to be adaptable back at my time at Sandhurst, and this was the time to implement it. The adjutant stood there and he told me that the mounted regiment required a new lifeguard officer. And he looked at me for a long period of time. And I realised in that moment that that was more of a one-way conversation, less of a career discussion. So I packed up my bags and headed off on the riding course. And before I even fully grasped how to conduct ceremonial duties with a horse, with all of this kit, something really prominent happened. And on the 8th of September in 2022, the nation went into mourning.
For me personally, the Queen's someone that I've always looked up to. She's been an inspiration to millions of people around the world for her 70-year reign, and it's someone that my family has grown up admiring. To be able to give her a funeral fit for a Queen is something that I'm very proud to be taking part in.
Today, things are very different. I cannot lead you into battle. I do not give you laws or administer justice. But I can do something else. I can give you my heart and my devotion to these old islands and to all the peoples of our brotherhood of nations.
We just want to put on the best possible parade for her to see her out in the best way. So it's a true honour to serve the King during this difficult time, to be a part of this funeral parade and procession, and I just hope this shows to everyone the incredible things that the royal family does that you maybe don't see all the time.
Throughout all my life, and with all my heart, I shall strive to be worthy of your trust.
I hope that they know that the household coverie's thoughts and prayers are with the entire royal family. Everything that we did was to make her as happy as she could be with us.
Of course, for many, this time of year will be tinged with sadness. If you are among them, you are not alone. And let me assure you of my thoughts and prayers. We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
I remember feeling incredibly sad receiving the news, because it dawned on me that I would never have the privilege of escorting Her Majesty, whether it be a state visit or conducting the role of the captain of the Queen's Lifeguard. And she'd been such an iconic female role model for my entire life. That moment of great sadness really struck me, but I felt also that I was just in a position of such great privilege. By only a couple of weeks, I got to the mounted regiment and was doing my final elements of training. I realized I was going to be in a position of such a unique perspective on an event of such national and historical importance. So, although this was a moment of mourning for the entire nation, the regiment had a job to do. And 200 horses were being brought back from Melton Mowbray, where they were fluffy, muddy, unshodden, and had probably lost a bit of weight, because that happens when you're not being fed quite as much hay as we give them. And they were about to descend on Knightsbridge Barracks. And we had 4 days to get them sorted and parade ready. And so every department worked so hard. And this was one of the most incredible things to see when I just arrived at the regiment. Whether it be the farriers department shoeing, there were only 12 of them in the department, shoeing those 800 hooves, or the saddlers refitting each of the saddles to make sure that the horses' backs that had maybe lost a bit of muscle or a bit of weight were fitting correctly, to the ops room in regimental headquarters, where I don't think I saw the lights off at any period during those 4 days, receiving complex matrices of parade timings, because it wasn't just the funeral day itself. There was D-5, D-10, the movements of Her Majesty down to the lying in state, where we were involved in all of it. And it was one of the moments that I've seen such a defining purpose motivate so many people. And although, as the regiment, you saw Trooper Brooks speaking there, most of the individuals in the regiment are extremely patriotic, and so did really take it to heart when Her Majesty passed away. But we had to hurry everyone up and snap into action. It was an absolute privilege to have the opportunity to be on the parade, considering I hadn't even left training yet, and conduct the final salute as the casket left Wellington Arch. Absolutely one of the most defining elements or moments in my career. And as we left the funeral behind us, the nation was getting used to having a new monarch, and the regiment had a new mission. Dates were set for His Majesty the King's first birthday parade, for the Standards Parade, and for the Coronation. And it felt the shift in mood to a far more uplifting spirit as we conducted our rehearsals and preparations in the build-up to the coronation itself. I brought a little bit of uniform with me today, and please feel free after the talk to come and get hands-on. You can try it on and see how heavy it is. I wasn't allowed to sign out the officers' helmets because each of them cost about £60,000, and the stores chap wouldn't let me have it, basically. But I've got a trooper's one here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the uniform, actually, because it's such a big element in the preparations. Each time that you go out on your horse and conduct the role or the rehearsal, whether it be early morning rehearsals, EMRs, was something that I got very used to during my time at Knightsbridge. That's basically where at 3 o'clock in the morning, we choose to ride our horses around London and not sleep. And it's quite tiring. So doing that in the build-up for about 8 weeks as a training period was quite intense. But the kit itself has to be cleaned to quite a high standard. And every element is inspected when the soldiers go and conduct their regular duties down at Horse Guards Parade. So it drives this sort of very competitive spirit among the soldiers as to who can have the cleanest kit. So you can imagine when the coronation, such a big event, was on, the competitive drive was, at its max. And I've told you a little bit, I've reflected a bit about the day of the coronation itself. But it was the moment in the morning when I was having a coffee out on the balcony. It was a sort of calm before the storm, when Major General Chris Geeker, General Officer commanding the Household Division at the time, joined me out on the balcony. And he'd just received an update a security update that informed us all that the Just Stop Oil protesters had lined the Mall, and 20 of them had been arrested with paint in the tents. Now, before that time, it was very jolly and the atmosphere was, wonderfully happy. We were very excited to deliver state ceremonial excellence for His Majesty. It was the beginning of his reign. And then we suddenly got brought back down to earth because we were reminded of our role, not just to look pretty and, look wonderful on parade, but also as a security element. And so as we mounted our horses that morning, the tone changed slightly and it was all very serious. The troop leaders were going through the dry drills, and we have actions on if there's a protester or an issue when the parade is happening. And so I was sort of on high alert. And it wasn't until I got about halfway down the Mall that I eased into things. And the enjoyment of seeing people's faces and everyone coming together, I sort of felt like I was on drugs. It was the most incredible experience. I had goosebumps the entire way down. And so what a privilege to be in that position, in that timeline, to be conducting state ceremonial duties when these huge events were happening. But these key events were not my only responsibility while I was at the Mounted Regiment. I was also nominated to be the musical ride officer. Now, the musical ride is a display of, we get together all of the best horses, all of the most competent riders across the regiment, and the band to create a routine to music. And it's really wonderful to watch, and you can watch it at the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Not that I'm selling it, but please do go down to the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth loved it, and she attended every year. But this year, we had a deployment to Aachen in Germany to sort of better the diplomatic relations while we were there and to showcase our ceremonial excellence. And that fell down, or the task of that fell on me. And so after the coronation, 2 days after, we deployed out to Germany with 47 soldiers and 33 military working horses, including the pride of the regiment, the 2 drum horses, which take about 5 years to train. So be very careful with them, was I think what the commanding officer said. So we deployed out to Germany and conducted a performance in front of 40,000 people. It was one of the most notable experiences for me because I was the sole officer deployed while the rest of the regiment were up in Edinburgh conducting the Scottish coronation for His Majesty. And the culture, the decisions while we were out there for 3 weeks fell on me. Now, we were out there to better diplomatic relations. If you allow the soldiers too much rope, they might have one too many beers and potentially undermine that. So it's a very tricky balance. You want them to enjoy themselves. This is a really unique opportunity. And I was also acutely aware of the high pressure that they'd had over such a long period of rehearsal build-up for the coronation. So you do want to give them a little bit of flex, but also just hit that tone just right. But this was really good for my own personal development and figuring out sort of my own leadership style and how I wanted to go about that. It's also an excellent soft power tool, and we're often at the request of the Foreign Office to deploy overseas and make these sort of links from a ceremonial perspective. Defence attachés can get very excited because we can create opportunities for future meetings because of, I suppose, how impressed people are by what the soldiers do. So this wasn't the only deployment that I've been very fortunate to go overseas and conduct. Another element that is used is short-term training teams. And these are teams put together often of individuals from the musical ride because they are our subject matter experts in their particular field, whether it be a riding instructor or musician. And this small team is put together to go and visit other areas across the world. Now, the regiment have a really high reputation, or really excellent reputation, for ceremonial excellence, and that spans obviously outside of Europe, because Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan were two countries that are developing their ceremonial units and wanted some guidance, knowledge, and advice. So we deployed over there for a couple of weeks, and this is a really excellent example of the opportunities, or the unique opportunities, that the army allows you. So those of you who are interested in the military career, the places that I've visited, I never would have travelled to Turkmenistan. They only allow 20,000 visas in each year. I had 2 soldiers on the trip with me who'd never gone outside of Europe. So it was a really fantastic experience to go and see a different culture and to ride their horses. You can see one of the Uzbek horses, not my biggest fan, challenging me there. And our farriers working on the horses and sharing their knowledge. And it was an absolutely fantastic opportunity. Mentioning the defence attachés, the defence attaché was very happy with us because he managed to secure 2 meetings with some brigadiers on both Uzbekistan, or level of brigadier, on Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan after our visit, and that was the impact that we had. Bringing that into the sort of current affairs aspect of why that's important, you'll all be familiar with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine at the moment. And so this gave me such a sense of satisfaction that we were contributing to the UK's projection of soft power overseas. There are many countries where Russia has some strong influence, and as the UK, we are constantly trying to smooth that over, or think of how we can better develop our relations with those countries. And I was a direct part of that, seeing our soldiers giving amazing expertise to those units. So the last little story that I'll share with you, and this is particularly relevant for the pupils in the room, but perhaps also for the teachers that are teaching them. I had no idea that I was going to go down this pathway. Even the army scholarship secured, I didn't know which regiment I was going to join. Those opportunities came up later on. And I was actually aspiring to go and do medicine when I was at school and before I got to university. And A-level results day was a really challenging day for me because I got a B in chemistry and I needed 3 A's to secure my offer of medicine down at Bristol. And it was 2 UMS. So I went for a remark and I waited a week and I lost loads of opportunities in clearing. And it was a really stressful period because I actually wasn't at Exeter School at the time. I was 200 miles away at boarding school and I didn't have family close to me and my entire world had fallen apart. I'd even lined up the Army bursary scheme that gives you £10,000 a year in your last 3 years at university. And it had all just collapsed in front of my eyes and I didn't have a plan B. So I don't tell you this to say flunk your exams. I tell you it to give you a bit of perspective. That when things don't necessarily go the way that you had planned for them to, it is about what you do in those moments of difficulty that very often define the opportunities that then arise afterwards. And I can safely say that I stood here 10 years later, I'm incredibly glad that I didn't get that A in chemistry. Because I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had, and I probably would have loved a career in medicine and that would have been excellent. But there are lots of different pathways that you can go down. And so I just offer that as my last piece sort of advice from my perspective and my experience. And I'll end, before we go into any questions, if you have any, by just saying thank you so much for having me here today, to be able to tell my journey and unique experience and perspective. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't, Exeter School was so wonderful at developing me in my formative years. Through my character, the skills that I learned at Exeter School fed into my time at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, which I've now used in my career. So I just want to say thank you very much to anyone who's returned, my teachers, I've seen a few of you, thank you for coming, and my supporters, I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Lizzie, and I'm sure all of us, we're very grateful that you've spoken so well and inspired us all. Before you come and try on all the military garb, we do have Gabe Payne, who's going to give our vote of thanks to our speaker. So over to you, Gabe.
As a senior cadet of the Army section, it's my great honour to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Captain Elizabeth Godwin for joining us today. Your willingness to share your experiences and insights into your remarkable career in the Army has truly enriched our understanding. Hearing about your involvement in nationally significant events such as the funeral of Her Majesty the Queen and the coronation of His Majesty the King Charles, and the leader of being the Lifeguard Squadron has been incredible to hear. Your dedication to leading a squadron of 60 soldiers and caring for 100 military working horses speaks volumes about your commitment and leadership. We are all so grateful for the time you've taken to be with us today and for the valuable lessons you've imparted. It's extremely important to recognise the groundbreaking significance of your achievement as the first ever female officer in the Lifeguards. This milestone represents a historic moment, not only for the regiment, but also for the armed forces as a whole. Breaking barriers such as that is nothing short of extraordinary and serves as an inspiration to all of us, demonstrating the power of resilience, skill, and determination. Your success paves the way for the future generations to dream bigger and push boundaries. As students at this school, it's so important and inspiring to see and hear the amazing work that old Exonians have been doing, as it motivates us and shows us what can be accomplished. On behalf of everyone here, I'd like to present you with this token of our appreciation. Thank you once again for being such an inspiring role model for everybody and for your service.
Thank you very much. Well done. Well done for speaking. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks.
So come and try it all on. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely weekend.